Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is a story that's been haunting me ever since I read it. A man whose entire world collapsed in a matter of days, not because of some sudden event, but because of years of betrayal hiding in plain sight. The man who shared this was named Thomas, 49, from Asheville, North Carolina. He had been married for over a decade to his wife Hannah, who was 45. Together, they had built what he believed was a peaceful life, 2 kids, a quiet neighborhood, and a routine that felt safe. Their son, Caleb, had just turned 6. Their daughter Rosie was only 2. Thomas truly believed they were working through things, like any couple. But 4 weeks ago, everything he thought he understood about his life unraveled. It began with something small, just a feeling. Hannah had always been protective of her phone, but lately it was different. She was glued to the screen, smiling softly at texts, then locking it the moment Thomas walked into the room. At first, he tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was private, and he respected that. But the smiles, the subtle tension, the way her eyes flicked away when he spoke, it built up until he couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, long after she had fallen asleep, he picked up her phone. He still remembers the sound of his heart pounding as he scrolled through the messages. At first, it was just confusion, but then it turned into nausea. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of texts with a man named Ryan, a 50-year-old coworker of hers. They'd been speaking for years. Explicit messages, intimate photos, promises of love, mentions of stolen weekends while Thomas was at home, feeding the kids and folding laundry, believing she was stuck at work. His hands trembled as he read. His eyes stung. There was a photo of them at a cabin in the mountains, a message saying, "I wish we didn't have to sneak around anymore." It had been going on for 4 years, long before Rosie was even born. The next morning, Thomas couldn't hold it in. He confronted her at the kitchen table while the kids were still sleeping. At first, she denied everything, said he misunderstood, said it was an old joke with a friend. But then, when he read the texts out loud, her entire face changed. She didn't cry, she just collapsed, like someone pulled the strings out of her. She admitted it. She told him the affair had started back when they were going through a rough patch, that she felt unloved, that he was always tired, always working, always distant. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know how to stop it. But none of it mattered. Thomas couldn't hear anything past the ringing in his ears and the image of his kids upstairs, their lives built on a foundation that was now broken. He needed proof, needed to see it with his own eyes. A few days later, he followed her after work. He parked a few blocks away from her office and watched as she exited the building, smiling, hand in hand with Ryan. They didn't even look over their shoulders. They got into his car, like it was the most normal thing in the world, and drove off. Thomas followed them. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant. He sat in his car across the street, invisible, watching through the rain-spotted windshield as they laughed and held hands, as Ryan tucked her hair behind her ear, as she leaned on his shoulder. But the part that truly shattered him came later that night when they pulled into a small apartment complex. He'd never seen it before. He waited. 10 minutes passed. No one came out. So he came back the next night, and the night after that. 4 nights in total, the same pattern, the same place. The apartment was theirs, a secret home she had built with another man. That's when something inside him broke. The next morning, he loaded every single thing she owned into the back of his car. Clothes, books, makeup, everything. He drove to her office and waited. When she finally stepped out for her lunch break, he pulled to the curb and began dumping her belongings onto the sidewalk in front of her coworkers. He didn't yell, he didn't cry, he just said, "You're not coming home." Then he drove away. Since then, he's filed for divorce. He's fighting for full custody of the kids. And Hannah? She's been begging him for forgiveness. She says she made a mistake, that she doesn't want to lose the family, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. But Thomas doesn't know how to move past it. His friends ask if he regrets humiliating her like that. And part of him does. He doesn't want to be cruel. But another part of him, the one that sat outside that apartment night after night, knows she tore their family apart long before he ever raised his voice. He misses her. Of course he does. But the only thing he truly cares about now is protecting his children from a life built on lies. It's hard not to feel for Thomas. After everything he uncovered, the years of deceit, the secret apartment, the photos and texts dripping with affection meant for someone else, who wouldn't feel broken? It's not just betrayal. It's the horrifying realization that someone you shared a home and children with was living a double life right under your nose. And the other man, Ryan, he knew. He had to. He didn't care. He was willing to play house with another man's wife and walk beside her in public like they had nothing to hide. Some online voices were quick to offer support. One comment hit Thomas like a slap of cold water. The only thing left to do now is get a DNA test. It was blunt, maybe even harsh, but it echoed in his mind for days. The timeline of the affair stretched back more than 4 years, before Rosie was even born. It was impossible not to wonder. Another commenter said what many were likely thinking. She had no problem making her affair public, so why should she cry now that the divorce is too? Thomas thought about that, about the image of Hannah laughing with Ryan at the restaurant, holding his hand while her wedding ring was still on her finger. If she could live like that in the open, then how could she expect him to protect her dignity now? Weeks passed before Thomas returned to Reddit with an update. He sounded tired, quieter, but he wanted to explain things, especially to the people who had asked how he could have missed 4 whole years of infidelity. Hannah was always intensely private, he wrote. She believed in boundaries, and if I asked too much about where she was going or what she was doing, she'd shut me down completely. She handled her own expenses, her half of the rent, her car, her phone. I took care of groceries, school costs, the internet, and anything for the kids. She said it was fair, and I believed her. Looking back, he said the signs were there, but when you trust someone, you don't always look for warning lights. You don't want to be suspicious. You want to believe in your partner. That belief, it was what blinded him. After the confrontation, after she admitted everything, Thomas did what many would have done, but few talk about. He took the advice from that blunt comment and got a DNA test. The results left him devastated. Caleb, his son, was biologically his. Rosie wasn't. It was a quiet kind of pain, the kind that creeps in and makes your chest feel hollow. But Thomas didn't hesitate when he said, "It doesn't change anything for me. I've raised her since the day she was born. I fed her, rocked her to sleep, kissed every scraped knee. I love her like my own, and no piece of paper is going to tell me otherwise." The divorce process was dragging on. As of now, nothing had been finalized. But Thomas was clear. He wasn't walking away from his children, not even for a second. He told the court he was fighting for full custody, not out of spite, not as revenge, but because he believed Hannah had shown a dangerous level of emotional neglect. Her double life wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a crack in the foundation of the entire household. "I need the court to understand," he wrote. "This isn't just about cheating, It's about character. It's about responsibility. It's about what's best for the kids. So far, only preliminary hearings had taken place. Thomas had submitted everything: screenshots of the messages, photos, timestamps, proof of the apartment lease. His lawyer also pushed for psychological evaluations for both parents, not to attack Hannah, but to help the court make the most informed decision possible. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The courts often lean toward joint custody, but Thomas wasn't giving up. He said he was ready to show that he had always been the primary caregiver, emotionally, financially, and physically. Even when Hannah was working overtime, he was the one packing lunches and driving to preschool. Some people doubted the story's truth, and Thomas didn't blame them. He said, "It sounds like something from a bad movie. I wouldn't believe it either if I wasn't living it." But he was living it, and now more than anything, he just wanted to give his children the life they deserved: steady, safe, and free from secrets. He ended his update with a quiet thank you to the strangers who had offered him kindness. "You'll never know how much it's helped," he wrote. And somewhere in Asheville, a broken father clung to the only thing that still felt real: the love he had for his kids. Thomas had been called strong by many of the people who read his story. But strength doesn't always feel like what people imagine. It doesn't feel like pride or resilience. Most days it just felt like exhaustion wrapped in silence. He hadn't wanted to humiliate Hannah, not really. He wasn't the kind of man who found comfort in revenge. But there was a kind of tragic justice in what he'd done, in showing her that choices have weight. A stranger online had told him, "At least she knows actions have consequences now." Another man, someone who'd been through 2 divorces of his own, had offered this: "They cheated and I dragged them through court and through social media. I don't regret a second of it. They got what they deserved." Thomas didn't disagree, but he didn't share that same fire anymore. He'd burned too hot for too long, and now all that was left was smoke. He responded to that commenter quietly. "I'm really sorry you had to go through something like this. Twice. That's unimaginable. But thank you. It helps to know I'm not alone." The loneliness. That was the part no one really talked about. It crept in after the anger, after the betrayal, after the long nights of whispering promises to his kids while they cried themselves to sleep. It was in the mornings when he made pancakes for Rosie and Caleb and realized there was no one across the table to share the silence with. It was in the way he stopped listening to music in the car because every song reminded him of a time when he thought his family was real. Thomas had every piece of proof anyone could ask for: screenshots of texts, explicit photos, dates, hotel receipts, emails. He'd sent all of it to himself before confronting Hannah, like he already knew how this would go. He could have published it all, a digital confession for the world to see. Part of him wanted to. Part of him burned for people to know what she'd done, how she'd pretended to be someone she wasn't. But every time he got close to doing it, the exhaustion pulled him back. "I barely have the energy to keep going," he wrote one night, "let alone drag them through the mud." He didn't understand it, why he still felt guilty, why he still wondered if maybe he was going too far. After all, it wasn't him who destroyed the marriage. It wasn't him who lied or hid or snuck around. And yet, whenever he imagined putting their betrayal out in public, something inside him recoiled. He said, "I don't want to stoop to their level." He was surviving on autopilot now: work, court dates, preschool drop-offs, grocery lists, laundry. Sometimes the anger would return, sharp and sudden, but mostly it was just the weight of reality. This was his life now: a quiet house with too many reminders, a future that didn't look like the one he planned. "I'm taking things one step at a time," he wrote, "focusing on what matters most: my kids. Getting through the divorce. Maybe one day I'll feel differently. Maybe I'll want the world to know what they did. But right now, I just want to survive this. Some readers thought he was weak for holding back. Others praised his restraint. But Thomas didn't care either way. He wasn't trying to be righteous or noble. He was just trying not to fall apart. And if protecting his peace meant keeping their sins private, then so be it. Meanwhile, the comment section moved on. Another story began to take shape, another thread from someone else, somewhere else. A 38-year-old man who'd been dating his girlfriend, 32, for 2 years. Early in the relationship, he lost his job and had no car, no savings, and no real plan. She stepped in without hesitation. She drove him to delivery jobs, helped him pay bills, even covered what he couldn't. She put herself in debt to keep him afloat. Now, 2 years later, he had a job. He was rebuilding. But when she asked him for a small favor, help paying for a haircut after an unexpected repair ate through her budget, he accused her of using him for money. He said she hadn't even asked how his day was before bringing it up. He told her it felt transactional, like all she wanted from him now was what he could provide. And just like that, everything she'd done for him, all the months of sacrifice, of patience, of unconditional support, crumbled under the weight of one bitter moment. And Thomas, sitting in the quiet of his living room, couldn't help but feel a hollow ache in his chest. Different story, same heartbreak. The story of the man who couldn't spare a few dollars for a haircut wasn't one Thomas expected to linger in his mind, but in moments of quiet, while packing school lunches or folding laundry late into the night, he found himself thinking about it. Not because it was outrageous or uniquely cruel, but because it carried the same ache he knew too well, the ache of someone who gives everything and still feels unseen. The man in the story, Ethan, was 38, living in a modest corner of Tacoma, Washington. His girlfriend, Rachel, 32, had been his anchor during one of the lowest chapters of his life. He lost his job just a few months into their relationship, and without a car or income, he struggled to even survive, let alone thrive. Rachel, with a quiet sense of loyalty, stepped in. She drove him to delivery gigs so he could earn tips through food apps. When he didn't make enough, she covered the difference out of her own savings. By the time Ethan got back on his feet and landed a steady job, Rachel was deep in debt. Not for anything luxurious or self-serving, just the cost of keeping a roof over both their heads. She never threw it in his face. She never used it against him. She just kept going, quietly. And then one weekend, she asked for something small. A haircut. She had already paid a deposit to the stylist, but then her home heating system failed, an emergency expense she hadn't planned for. Short on funds, she reached out to Ethan and asked if he could help cover the remaining balance so she wouldn't have to forfeit her deposit. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a favor. But Ethan, tired from work and mentally stretched thin, didn't see it that way. He told her that it felt like she didn't even care about how his day had been, that she only called to ask for money, that maybe he was just her wallet now. Rachel, shocked and hurt, reminded him of everything she had done, the sacrifices, the debts she took on, the time and energy she poured into helping him rebuild. And still, he pushed back. He told her he had just paid for new tires, replaced her brake pads, and had been covering the insurance and monthly payment for the car, the same car he used daily more than she did. He insisted that he was contributing, that her asking for a haircut made it feel like she was guilting him, like she was trying to control him. Now, she wouldn't speak to him, and he was afraid she might walk away for good. Ethan explained that he'd always hated taking money from her, that he'd only accepted help when it was necessary, rent, electricity, food. But a haircut? To him, that felt like an unnecessary luxury, a slap in the face after everything. Reading that, Thomas felt something crack inside him. This wasn't about a haircut, it never was. It was about someone reaching out for comfort, for a simple sign that after years of sacrifice, she wasn't being taken for granted, that her worth wasn't measured by whether the light stayed on or whether the bills got paid. Sometimes love looks like making someone feel seen, and sometimes the smallest things carry the most weight. The responses online were swift and merciless. She helped pay your way for a year and a half, and now she asks for a tiny favor and you treat her like a burden? One person wrote. Another added, you're using her car every day and you're acting like she owes you something. Others questioned whether Ethan ever truly appreciated her, or if he just liked the safety she gave him. A few called him entitled. One said it bluntly, you don't sound like someone who loves her. You sound like someone who used her. Ethan tried to defend himself in the comments. He claimed he didn't feel good about taking money from her, that he had repaid some of the debt she took on during his unemployment, but the words rang hollow, not just to her, to everyone who read his story. One user pointed out the obvious. You're still making payments on debt she accrued for you, then you're not even. You're just catching up. Another person shared a memory about a man they once knew, a guy who'd been gifted a used car by his girlfriend so he could make it to work. Not only did he complain about buying new tires for the car, but he insisted she should keep covering the expenses because she was the one who gave it to him in the first place. That man eventually got fired for stealing pallets from work to build a fence. A selfish user to the very end. And Ethan, whether he realized it or not, had become that kind of man. A man who couldn't recognize when love was being offered freely. A man who thought repayment erased responsibility. A man who mistook comfort for entitlement. The response to his update was swift and harsh. She supported you fully for nearly 2 years, one commenter wrote. And the first time she needed you, you showed her exactly what she was worth to you. Nothing. Another added, the breakup is perfect. She finally chose herself. I just hope she gets her car back. Rachel never responded to Ethan's follow-up messages. From what others gathered, she blocked his number and cut off all ties. She had every reason to. She had carried him during his darkest chapter, through joblessness, through debt, through uncertainty, and when she finally stumbled, when she asked for something as small and human as help with a haircut, he made her feel like a burden. That's what broke her. Not the argument. The realization that all her effort had been conditional, appreciated only so long as she asked for nothing in return. And that was what Thomas couldn't shake from his mind. He thought about Hannah, how she had lived a double life for years, and how even after all the pain she caused, he still felt the sting of absence. And now he saw another woman suffer, this time not from betrayal of fidelity, but betrayal of gratitude. In the end, Rachel left quietly. She didn't blast Ethan online, she didn't demand the money back, she didn't seek sympathy. She just walked away from a man who never saw her clearly, who never valued her until it was far too late. And maybe that was the most painful truth of all, that some heartbreak doesn't come from betrayal, but from the slow erosion of respect. This story, like so many others, is a reflection of what happens when relationships become one-sided, when love is mistaken for obligation and help is received without humility. Whether it's a partner who cheats or one who simply stops showing appreciation, the result is the same: emotional erosion. If you've ever been in a relationship where you gave more than you received, it's important to take a step back and ask yourself, is this love, or am I just being used? Real love is reciprocal. It doesn't keep score, but it also doesn't ignore imbalance. Support during tough times should be met with acknowledgement, not entitlement. To protect yourself, set clear boundaries early on. Keep shared responsibilities visible, both financially and emotionally. If you're helping someone long-term, track those sacrifices and assess whether they are truly appreciative. And if you're the one receiving support, never minimize what's being done for you. Gratitude is not optional, it's the bare minimum. And most importantly, remember, leaving isn't a failure. Walking away from someone who doesn't see your worth is one of the bravest, most necessary forms of healing.